I'm Denise Hill. Transport Canada is considering a reduction in the number of flight attendants on board our aircraft. If we adopt the U.S. rule in the spirit of harmonization, we will lose one or more flight attendants on board 26 out of the 32 aircraft in Canada at full loads. If Transport opts for a proposal being pushed by some airlines, we would have even fewer flight attendants than the American rule under certain circumstances. In the meantime, Transport has used a ministerial exemption to remove one of the 2 flight attendants on board aircraft, including the regional jet, the Dash 8-300, and the ATR-42. We are deeply concerned about the impact that these changes are going to have on the traveling public. This video will explain to you why. Your safety is in our hands.
Brace, brace, get your heads down! Brace, brace, keep your heads down! Brace,
These airline passengers have very little time. Just over a minute or so to get out of an aircraft filling up with toxic smoke. Most of these passengers don't know what to do. Some have panicked and become hysterical. Others sit frozen in fear. Still more are physically incapable of getting out on their own. If they do make it, they will praise the cabin crew, the flight attendants who saved their lives. They knew what to do. John Nance is an airline safety authority and a commercial airline pilot based in Seattle. For him, a plan before Transport Canada to reduce the number of flight attendants is misguided and dangerous. Some air carriers are pressuring Transport Canada to change the present ratio of 40 passengers per flight attendant on a full load to 50-to-1. For Nance, even 40-to-1 is barely acceptable.
In my view, a 30-to-1 ratio is probably getting closer to where we really ought to be in terms of being able to handle today's modern jet aircraft, especially getting up to 250 to 350 people. But this is also true in an aircraft with 150 seats and only 70 people on board, because several of those flight attendants may be incapacitated. They may not be in a position to be by the door that's operating. There are many different considerations here, but certainly at 40-to-1, I think we are on the outer limits of what is a reasonably acceptable figure, and I felt that way for a long time.
The ratio of 50 seats per flight attendant, the standard in the United States, is based on ideal evacuation tests like this one. Everything goes smoothly, and why not? There is no toxic smoke in the cabin, no panic, no hesitation. The passengers are alert, healthy, and well prepared, and they know nothing can happen to them. These flight attendants have extensive experience on Canadian carriers, and they have all lived through emergencies. They believe there is safety in numbers.
The more there are of us, the more forceful and the louder our commands will come through, because in each stage of an evacuation, whether it's what we call a planned emergency or an unplanned emergency, we have very precise and clear shouted commands. And we're supposed to yell out these commands. They're very simple, just a few words, and they direct the passengers in what to do. And so the more of us there are, the greater chance of these commands getting through to the people that you'll have. If there are only a few flight attendants, I'm sure they'll just be lost.
Most of us don't think of flight attendants as safety experts. It's not so much ignorance as denial, a defense mechanism. We make a mental bargain when we fly. Everything's going to be all right. And for the most part, that's true. Flying is safe, for the most part.
Just one look at the wreckage from TWA Flight 843 shows you how lucky the 292 people aboard it were to get out alive.
The passengers were luckier than they knew. Their L-1011 broke apart in July 1992 at New York's JFK Airport. The pilot had aborted the flight just after takeoff. On board were 9 flight attendants, 3 better than required under U.S. regulations. If you have to be in an air emergency, these are the kind of numbers to have in your favor.
The first words I heard were from the flight attendant who yelled, "Evacuate, evacuate." They were coaching people on how to get out. Once we got on the ground, there were people directing us where to go. Others did very well.
These people in that cabin are the absolute difference between life or death in an emergency evacuation. And that emergency evacuation can take place in a blink of an eye on a landing or takeoff. You simply can't get rid of 150 to 250 passengers in 90 seconds, get them out of an airplane safely, if you don't have enough people at those doors and barking the orders and making people move.
Air Ontario knew Flight 1363 crashed within minutes after it happened, but officials didn't know why.
The crash of an Air Ontario plane in March 1989. The F-28 aircraft had taken off with ice on its wings. It went down shortly afterwards in the woods near the end of the runway in Dryden, Ontario. There were 69 people on board. 24 of them died, including 3 members of the crew.
I heard explosions and people crying and screaming and yelling for help.
Fortunately, one of the 2 flight attendants, Sonia Hartwick, survived, and she was able to lead others to safety.
The condition of that cabin inside, describe it for us.
It was very dark. You can hear people screaming and yelling, calling for help. You couldn't see anything. Again, the smoke was too thick. And you can hear constant explosions.
Did you yell out something?
Yes, I yelled, come this way, come this way. I was hoping that passengers would hear me and follow my voice.
But what if Sonia Hartwick had been the only flight attendant on board? And what if injury or death had prevented her from helping passengers? Because of a Transport Canada exemption, Cherie Gillen is the only flight attendant on board her Air Ontario aircraft. It carries 50 passengers. In one emergency, she had to investigate a suspected fire in the baggage compartment and worry about getting the fire under control before getting passengers ready to brace themselves.
If we don't have time, we just tell them, this is what's happening, and you've got to do what I say and do it now.
Hope for the best.
And hope for the best.
I just don't see how it's possible with one person.
That's terrible.
You have no support.
Nope. Nope.
No backup.
Because the pilots are busy doing what they need to do, and you're busy handling the cabin and all the passengers.
And if we ever had an emergency or a crash landing, the pilots are out the top. They're gone. I'm the only one there. They're out of that airplane, and they're maybe outside helping, but I'm the only one there.
On this aircraft, Boeing 727, there are 9 emergency exits, 2 doors.
Most airline passengers are not as safety conscious as they could be. Studies show we don't listen to safety instructions just before takeoff. We aren't paying attention.
98% aren't. You'll get the odd person who will pay attention, but unfortunately it's the old scenario of people think nothing's going to happen to me. Nobody's well prepared. And you always think, oh, these things happen to other people or on TV, but nothing's going to happen to me. So that's why everyone is taken by such shock and surprise when something does go wrong.
And I find frequent flyers are on the airplane so often that they actually believe nothing is going to happen to them. So they sit there with their seatbelt way out here, and they slouch, and they have things on the seat beside them, and they sort of look at you like, I'm on this airplane more than you are.
Even if most of us did pay attention to safety instructions, we would still need at least as many flight attendants on board as we have now, because passengers are not all the same. We're not all business people, or all on vacation, or all young and agile.
I can't imagine being accountable and responsible for 50 versus 40, especially with the nature of maybe the passengers that are flying today, which is probably more disabled people that are not required to travel with an aid, probably more unaccompanied children and elderly folks. And I think all the flight attendants sitting here today could attest to the fact that if you were in a accident, crash situation, you're going to stay there and you're going to help those folks. You're going to do your best to make sure that they get out of that aircraft alive.
Then there are the extra demands made today of flight attendants, the extra know-how and stamina, which also call out for reasonable ratios involving passengers.
We have to be competent as flight attendants on 9 different type of aircraft, and they're all different. The operation of the doors, the emergency equipment, the oxygen system, everything is different, and we have to know each and every aircraft, whereas pilots are only competent on 1 at a time. So when you think of it in terms like that, to be 1 person less, we're already overloaded, in my opinion. And having been in an accident, I want as much support as I can get.
At the end of these longer and longer and longer duty periods, and I'm talking maybe 15, 16 hours, how alert can you possibly be? We're not bionic yet. So again, no matter how well rested you try to be before the flight, at the end of an extremely long duty period, your reflexes may not be as sharp as they could be, and with fewer and fewer flight attendants, you're really playing with a very dangerous mixture there.
Korean Air Flight 2033, only minutes after its aborted landing. The heat so intense...
Amazingly, all 152 passengers survived this Korean air crash in 1994. Airline emergencies are few and far between. Otherwise, we wouldn't fly at all. But when accidents do happen, the odds of survival are much better when the right number of flight attendants are there to guide us.
Even though operations in aviation are routine 99.9% of the time, that other 0.1% is where everything has to work exactly right. And you have to have people that are resilient and well-trained and able to snap into operation instantaneously to direct those near-panicked passengers out the proper doors in 90 seconds. That is a Herculean task. And you certainly don't want to have a diminution in the number of trained flight attendants doing that when the worst situation occurs. And it can in a heartbeat.
This evacuation is not the real thing. That's why it is proceeding so smoothly. But only a mock exercise can get by this way. In real life, in real danger, we need all the help we can get.
Isn't it a shame, though, that it takes a tragedy or an accident to make people much more aware of the safety aspect? And people do get lulled into a false sense of security that nothing's going to happen to me. Well, we've been lucky in Canada that we've had, well, not just luck, we have very, very high safety standards, and it is a shame that this is now going to be compromised because people will suffer from it. And we all hope, well, maybe, I hope it won't be my flight, maybe it will be, unfortunately.
Thank you.